good point, because Sagittarius and its key ruling planet Jupiter can just expand and really lead to nothing. Sometimes we can just dissipate the energy with ideas,
philosophy.
Right. Let's get drunk, high, stoned, sit around and talk about the meaning of life. And sometimes that teaches you something, and sometimes just teaches you how full of crap you are, or that you have to go to work no matter how wise you are. But as Rick pointed out wisely, is that Saturn, Jupiter's contractive, concentrated, crystallizing, grounding counterpart, forming this most creative, harmonious of angles with Jupiter, suggests the possibility of taking the larger vision and capturing enough of it to really build something from this vision. Now, there are a couple of other things I want to add about this. Jupiter and Saturn were trine back on July 17th this year. This trine, this harmonious connection between the planets of expansion and contraction, is the second in the series. The third and last this time around is in May, on the 24th of May, this coming year, 2014, and that really is, from a strategic point of view, where we're aiming in terms of crystallizing a big plan or a larger point of view. The other thing I wanted to say, and it's Sagittarian time, Rick and I could each probably give 3-hour talks tonight, but...
And we will, and the doors are locked.
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome. Yes. At any rate, here's what's interesting. We started talking about Sagittarius, and today, in fact, Mercury, the planet of communication, went into Sagittarius, which is really appropriate for speaking enthusiastically and in exaggerated ways, as Rick said, Exaggitarius, and saying sometimes too much. But the thing is this, while there's this sort of enthusiasm or optimism or hope, turning it into reality, which Jupiter and Saturn together can do, requires something different, because Jupiter and Saturn are in water signs. Water, as Rick said, is the element of feeling. So what this means is, our big ideas need a ground of emotional credibility within ourselves to take root. In other words, imagine that the 12th, and it's really effective several days before and after, you went in to see the authorities, Jupiter and Saturn, to present your plan, to tell them about all your ideas. And basically, they're not going to be dazzled by the brilliance of the idea unless it takes root in the gut. If it's something that you can feel, not something that you just say and think, then I think you have a better chance of turning this rich opportunity into something that will actually manifest.
And in fact, a good exercise to do, to begin today, while we're still feeling the energy of the new moon, is to make a list. But not just any list. Make a list of all the Jupiterian possibilities, the options, the opportunities, the potential in your life. And then bring in Saturn and think of all the things that you need to do in order to make those things that are potential, in order to turn them into reality. The flip side of that is then go to Saturn, make a list of all the things you can't do, all the things that are in your way. That's the Saturn side. And then go back to Jupiter and say, but what can I do to overcome these? What can I do to meet these obstacles? What can I do to ameliorate these things that are in my way, to turn them into something that I can work with? And then we get to the positive side of how the planet of expansion, Jupiter, and the planet of contraction, Saturn. You see, if something expands too much too fast, like a balloon that you blow up, if you don't pay attention to Saturn, the limit, the balloon pops. A business that grows too fast, Jupiter, becomes bankrupt because it doesn't have any control. But a business that has too much Saturn, that's too controlling, doesn't ever Jupiter, it doesn't grow. And so this idea of using these principles of reward and working for it, reward Jupiter, working for it Saturn, of expansion Jupiter, contraction Saturn, when these planets work together, it can be very beneficial. And Jeff mentioned the date from last July. It may make sense to go back in your mind and think about, what were you doing in July? What ideas did you have then? What feelings? What was going on in your gut when the watery energy of July was really running rampant? And what is it that you may have set aside that may be now back on the burner that you can aim at next May and say, I'm going to make this happen?
Yeah, we had a grand trine with actually 4 planets in a water grand trine with Jupiter and Saturn last summer.
Planets.
Yeah, so that was potentially really helpful. Well, I said today Mercury went into Sagittarius. Not a sign that Mercury is particularly comfortable in.
Because?
Because Mercury's about the lower mind. It's about data, it's about facts, it's about details, and yet Sagittarius is a sign of philosophy and meaning. So what can happen with Mercury and Sagittarius is we pump ourselves up with more and more and more and more and more data, but it isn't necessarily all that useful or all that relevant.
Or we can have unsubstantiated opinions. Opinions are Sagittarius. Or the cosmic bullshit can be so deep that the boots don't keep it off of us.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I watch some of these, you know, like The Voice and some of these shows like that, and you know, when they interview the contestants almost always say the same thing. I really want this. Well, of course. Everybody wants to win at the contest that they're in, that they've gone through the trouble to get to. And the Sagittarian energy, at its worst, well, near worst, can lead us to believe that our wanting it, the enthusiasm, is what we need to make it happen. And clearly, that's not enough. If you're just running on your enthusiasm, you're not going to get that trip to Tahiti. You're not going to get that PhD. You're not going to get that perfect partner, not as long as Jupiter and Saturn are sitting there in water signs and going, come on, do you really need it? Is it something that resonates with you at a level beyond that of this sort of promising, you know, this sort of fake hyper-optimism that we Americans are very good at? You know, well, we may meet some of that, and yet with Jupiter and Saturn in water signs, the irony is, to have your most enthusiastic dream come true requires a good dose of skepticism. Not a skepticism that you won't do it or that you can't do it, but a skepticism that says, as Rick pointed out before, there's a process to go through to get there. And if your enthusiasm runs too far ahead of the process, then there's a split.
And I think that skepticism is a bit difficult today, tomorrow, the next day, when Mercury moves into Sagittarius, because Mercury in Sagittarius sees the possibilities, it sees the potential, and on top of that, as if that wasn't difficult enough, Mercury going into a sign where it's not comfortable, as Mercury moves into Sagittarius, it begins to pick up on a square that's exact tomorrow, the day that's exact on the 6th. And that square is with dreamy, imaginative Neptune. So not only does detailed, data-oriented Mercury go into somewhere it doesn't really much care about the details, but it's now running into a hard aspect with the planet of dreams, imagination, and spirituality, and it's basically saying, I used to know the words, but now all I can do is hum the song, and I can't even remember what it was about.
I was thinking of the shadow side. It's the shadow side of optimism, because when Rick said, oh, you can't be skeptical because Mercury's in Sagittarius, I'm sitting there going, bullshit. That's not true. I'm totally skeptical. But the dark side of hyper-optimism is a deep, dark, painful pessimism. That fire doesn't suffer well. You know, if you're a good water sign, earth sign, you know how to complain and eliminate pains and long-term kind of processes of difficulty. Fire is not very good at that, and I think especially Sagittarius, which means that the shadow side of that, of the hyper-enthusiasm, is the profound disbelief and despair, because it's not happening right now. And if you find yourself, because there has to be some area of life in which perhaps you're not going to be overly enthusiastic during the next 3 weeks or so, be aware of the side that also says, no, this can't be. This can't be because it's not happening now. That is a childish approach. That's what fire can be, so spontaneous and so much in the moment that it acts like a child. But I believe this can happen, and if you tell me I have to wait, or if you tell me it can't happen, well, either then you're wrong, or I'm going to go in my room and be very sad for the next 2 weeks. So there is that potential, particularly at this time of the year, which evokes a lot of weird stuff for people.
A lot. So, Mercury into Sagittarius is one of 2 planets that are changing signs this week. The other one is that Mars, what's interesting is that if we back this up a day, you can see that Mercury is at the end of Scorpio, Mars is at the end of Virgo, and Venus is moving toward the end of Capricorn, and so Mercury changes signs, and then Mars changes signs on the 8th, and we think that Venus is ready to change signs, but we have a problem here with Venus that we'll get to in a moment, and it's going to go about Mercury retrograde, but we got Venus retrograde coming later this month, and then Mars retrograde coming early next year, and these are less frequent, but we can feel them every bit as much. But we have Mars moving into Libra.
Yeah, and that's like, how can I say this nicely? It's going to get fairly crowded. Well, it's basically like, Mars going into Libra, it's going to last forever. Mars only sits through a sign in 7 weeks, but Mars turns retrograde next year, and will be in Libra, a sign that it hates. It will be in Libra until sometime in July of 2014. We have more than 7 months of Mars in Libra, which is like Libra pulse in a blind trust. It basically takes the Mars energy, which is male or female, a testosterone, adrenaline force, and it puts it through this vaporizer that has us all making Richard Simmons, So this is a period of time in which the issues of anger, negotiation, and relationships are shifting to a place in which the usual force, bullying, pushing is less likely to be there.
Well, as Jeff often says, there's no good signs or bad, well, maybe there are no good signs or bad signs, good signs or bad signs, but there are situations of higher levels of difficulty. And the reason why Mars in Libra is a higher level of difficulty is that Libra wants to be nice. Libra is a Venus ruled sign. Mars is the god of war. Mars doesn't want to be nice. Mars wants to win at all costs. Mars wants to defend his territory and take yours. Right? So Mars wants to engage. However, it's not all bad news, because when you combine the martial side of the militaristic Mars with the sweet and well-balanced artistic side of Libra, you get martial arts. You get assertion rather than aggression, or you get aggression that is tactical or strategic. Chess is a perfect example of a dysfunctional Mars, because you're not telling anyone, and a functional Mars Libra, where because there's rules of engagement, and it becomes about strategy, and it's still about winning, but it doesn't have the instantaneity of Mars that says, you piss me off, bam, gone. Instead, in Libra, it has to deal with the negotiation and the process, and it has to win nicely.
And I want to point out that if you have Mars in Libra, it's perfect. It's perfect for you. There's no reason that you can't be very successful in life and in using for Mars. It's a longer journey. When a planet is in its home sign, Aries, the home sign for Mars, the sign of the planet is similar, so it's bang, it's a direct hit. When a planet is in a sign opposite its home, such as Mars in Libra, it bang, the adrenaline energy, which is Mars, has to go through this process of how this affect other people, will they like it, will they not like it, which is more complex. But when it's learned, which is much easier to do when it's in your own chart than when it's passing through, then I think it's better than having a planet in its own sign, because there's more levels of dimensions. It's like taking 2 people, one who was very physically strong and stayed that way throughout her whole life, and another who was physically weak but built herself up. The latter will have an understanding of both strength and weakness that the former did not. And that's the benefit for challenges in life sometimes, but sometimes that's reliable patterns as well.
Now, the other challenge of this forever Groundhog Day repetition of Mars staying in Libra from December until next July is the fact that as Mars inches its way through Libra, it will go opposite. We'll get here a little more detail in a moment, but we're on Mars in Libra, and this picture is compounded because remember the ongoing Uranus-Pluto square that's been with us for a couple of years and will be with us yet for a couple of years, which is about all these global and individual transformations and meltdown and reconstruction and reinventing ourselves. Well, as Mars moves through Libra, it's going to oppose Uranus and square Pluto. That is going to create some additional stress on the fact that Mars already doesn't like to be in Libra.
Right, so if we're in a period of transformation, which is probably always all of us all the time, but astrologically, Uranus-Pluto square, these 2 outer planets at right angles to one another from 2012 to 2015 make this an even juicier time. Mars entering the picture ratchets up the intensity. And yet what Mars in Libra offers us is the possibility of strategically and gracefully and graciously managing radical change. That's, the trigger. Mars is the trigger. The trigger's in a very sensitive place. And we can use that sensitivity, that strategic sense of, well, if I do this move, what am I likely to get back in response to that? Mars in Libra is the capacity to respond. It's like life is a tennis game, but you never get to serve. You only get to return serve. So here we've got a greater capacity, perhaps, for responding and reacting to what's being given to us, although it might be a little bit more difficult to get new things off the ground. And when we do want to get new things off the ground, double check, triple check to see who it affects, how it affects them, is their support lined up so that you've got it, don't make assumptions. Mars says, if you're going to do something, when I'm in Libra, make sure you're just not off there on your own. Be aware of the environment you're in.
So we have Mercury moved into Sagittarius today. We have Mars moving into Libra on the 8th. And then Mercury, let's stop here on a moon transit on the 9th, only because we don't normally do moon transits.
I just want to, for those who listen carefully, I said that Mars went into Libra on the 7th, which it does, I think here, Rick uses East Coast time, because he always writes his column for the East Coast.
Because I'm from New York.
Right, but I'm from New York, but I have to. So, for us, it'll be on the 7th.
That's right.
That's all.
That's right. Yeah, it is on the 7th.
All right.
But, so on the 9th, the moon moving through Pisces makes a grand trine with the Jupiter and Saturn, which is exact. Remember, the Jupiter-Saturn trine is exact on the 12th. But we get a hit on the 9th, which kind of ratchets up this ability to work with this expansion-contraction energy that we talked about earlier.
Join Rick Levine and Jeff Jower for their annual forecast seminar at beautiful Brighton Bush Hot Springs, Oregon from January 10th through 12th next year. For details, go to brightonbush.com. That's BREITENBUSH.com. Join astrologers Jeff Jower, Alan Oken, Aaron Sullivan, and Lauren Albandian for the Wisdom of Astrology Conference from March 29th to April 4th, 2014 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. For details and registration, go to alanoken.com or click the link on the front page of stariq.com.